everybody. Thank you so much for that introduction. And apologies, I was meant to be here a little bit earlier, and I need to practice actually some of what I am here to share with you, because I was recording a podcast with quite heavy subject matter. Then after we finished recording it, talk about the weight of knowing, then we realised that the audio thing that captures it stopped working. And so we were driving around JB Hi-Fi to find a replacement one. We re-recorded it twice, potentially re-traumatising ourselves because everything we were covering was quite heavy. So I would have actually quite appreciated being here for that mindfulness, because I feel like that would have centred me. So apologies for being late. But I would like to start off by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land on which we meet, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I not only pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging, but I continually draw strength and knowledge from First Nations people before me. We're talking about the weight of knowing. We're talking about strength through difficult times, and nobody has shown more knowledge sharing and strength than First Nations people. So today, I am talking about the weight of knowing and staying emotionally strong while staying informed. And it can be incredibly difficult. And I'd like to say I have all of the answers, but I do not. I have my experiences to share and what some trends that have emerged about news fatigue and about mental health, which I think are really important for us to think about. So many of you, if you don't know who I am or what I do, I was unfortunately brought to national and international attention December 2023 when I was a casual radio host, as I have done before for ABC Radio, and I was sacked. But in addition to that, I've done a bunch of things. I've written a book, I've co-founded a not-for-profit, I've worked at a bunch of different outlets. But my daughter, I think, she likes to remind me, she says, "Oh, Mummy, you're Australia's most famous sacked person." Which is not something, I did try and roll it into my LinkedIn. It didn't quite work. But yes, what then happened was, as many of you will know, for those of you who don't, good for you, turned out into a very public, very trying court matter. It's not easy. Litigation is not easy on the best of days, but I thought it was incredibly important for our public broadcaster to be held accountable, for employees to be able to share a political opinion, have a political opinion. And this goes back to the weight of knowing that we are living at a time when there is an unfolding genocide. Any skepticism that is not happening today, an association of global scholars have categorically concluded that there is a genocide unfolding. And my crime in December 2023 was to share a Human Rights Watch post, my so-called crime, about starvation being used as a tool of war, which we now accept, or most people accept, is absolutely happening. And the truth is, it's not over for me. I'm back in court tomorrow. The penalty hearing is tomorrow, and that is where the court determines what penalties the ABC should pay for its various contraventions of the law. It's to act as a deterrence for that employer, but also for other employers. And so this has been, obviously an incredibly taxing time. Would I recommend it for others? No. But would I do it again? Yes. Because what I drew strength from, an enormous amount of strength from, was conviction, having a belief system, and being supported by those I love to continue to fight for what I believed in. As was mentioned earlier, this is legit. I am in the Urban Dictionary as Lattoufed. You can buy that mug. I have no idea who was in the market for a Lattoufed mug. I'd be a bit concerned if they wanted to drink their morning coffee from that, but there is a Lattoufed mug for anybody who would care for it. I do want to take a moment to say, I did a whole bunch of things before becoming a verb. I was a... I was a journalist for a bunch of outlets for many, many years across different formats. I worked in commercial television at Network 10. I was the first Arab female reporter on Network 10. And so one of the things I really wanted to do was not only ensure that stories were told from various perspectives, but that I helped bring other people through the door after me, because I thought that, well, I know that audiences are more enriched if the stories they are telling truly represent the country. And so, yeah, I just want a reminder that I'm not just a verb. A lot of people have said to me, and they routinely say to me, you've shown incredible strength. Lots of people, which is lovely. I have a lot of support, people coming up to me in public with various stories. I often have people coming up and crying because, you know, they felt so connected or so moved. And I'm continually told, you know, you are so strong, you are so strong. And, you know, in some way that answer is, or that description is fair, but many a times that was me just drinking my sorrows through the night. I had enormous, you know, anguish with my mental health. You know, I was self-soothing with alcohol. I was using sleeping tablets. I was having paranoia in public. You know, the weight of knowing and the weight of standing for what I believed in is not what the social media posts suggest. And I guess I want to be really transparent that sometimes not only knowing but showing and telling can come at an enormous cost. And it's definitely been difficult and continues to be difficult for me. I want to do a bit of a throwback to this is my family. If you're wondering which monobrow is mine, I'm third in the back row. But my parents came as refugees from Lebanon in the mid-70s. We were incredibly poor growing up. My parents were pulled out of school before they reached the age of 10. And so from a young age, I guess I inherently understood adversity. You don't know it at the time. You kind of know it when you look back at your school uniform and you're wondering why you're the only one not wearing the school uniform, and you realise that your parents couldn't afford it. And so Mum went to the op shop and got me something that looked as close to the school uniform as possible. But I know that she was trying her best. But you know, public education was enormously useful because it was it's an equaliser, and it enabled me to then go to university and do all the things I've done since. Why am I sharing this? Well, I guess I had some practice at adversity, and I guess experience made me a little bit more resilient. But I want to highlight the fact that, you know, resilience it's a muscle. It's not something that is innate. It's not something that we just have, you know. And you know, there has been plenty of research which shows that, you know, some personalities tend to have more resilience, but by and large, it's a muscle that you can train. And so, yes, some of my childhood experiences, growing up in a poor, marginalised ethnic community, would have contributed to that. But it's definitely something that you can work on. This very strange thing happened. So many strange things have happened in the past 20 months. One of which is that throughout this process, artists and photographers have decided or asked if they can capture. Or, you know, if someone says, you know, I want to take a photograph or whatever, and I'm like, yeah, cool. So this fugly portrait of me was entered into the Archibalds. And when I saw it, when it came back to me, I mean, I told the artist, I was like, love what you do, can't draw, what the hell is that? And so when Gina Reinhardt came out and she was like, she hated that artist who drew that portrait of her, I was like, Gina Reinhardt and I have something in common, a sentence I did not expect to say. Anyway, so what happened in that instance was, as I went to be photographed, as I've learnt now that you get photographed often and then they draw or they paint afterwards, I sat down to take my shoes off, and I was really feeling enormous pressure, enormous news fatigue, not just from the atrocities coming out of the Middle East, but, you know, take your pick. There was climate change, you know, domestic violence, growing inequality, growing homelessness amongst women aged over 55. Jessica Alba and her husband broke up. There were like so many things that I could be upset about. Anyway, and so I sat down and I really was struggling with enormous paranoia at this stage too, because I had experienced so many threats and death threats. And I remember when I walked into his studio, I was just like, do you want to kill me? I said to him, I was like, have you lured me here? Hold a second, I'm just going to call someone. Then I called my husband. I was like, call me back in 5 minutes just to double check that this guy's a serious artist and doesn't want to kill me. And so, that was a legitimate concern that I had at that time. Anyway, so I took my shoes off and I just, that is how I was feeling. And as much as it's kind of to look at, I actually appreciate it because that moment in time showed the weight of what I was feeling. And it's replicated in a lot of people who feel the weight of the world. And you'll often hear people say, oh, I don't watch the news, it's too depressing. I try and look away because I can't get on with my day. And so news fatigue is a real thing. It is happening. And it comes at a time when trust in legacy media is dropping. So the Edelman Trust Barometer in 2021 found, and it's this global kind of survey of media consumption and trust patterns, found that in 2021, 51% of Australians had trust in media. By 2025, that slipped to 39%, which is a real concern. And those most likely to be distrustful are younger Australians, people from marginalised communities, like ethnic communities, and people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. And it is, I know people say bury your head in the sand. These people did bury their head in the sand, and this was for a climate protest at Bondi Beach in 2015. But those most likely to bury their heads in the sand are those who probably need to be engaged with the news or where policies impact them the most. And so, and part of the reason the Reuters Institute released some research, some more insights into, okay, so we know there's news fatigue. We know that there is a trust deficit. What is it about the news fatigue? What is it that's making people go, I just want to look away? Often it was because it's all doom and gloom. I just can't handle the doom and gloom. But also, I don't like the way I am represented. I don't like the way somebody like me is represented. And that could be, if you're a woman and you have to read representations of women who have been killed in a domestic violence, the way the bloke who does it is like, well, he's just had a bad day, but he was a good bloke and he coached the local soccer team. And so when you look at some of those factors, it shows, to me, it's a bit of a worrying trend because those who need to be represented and need to have stories fairly representing them or critiquing the policies that impact them are those who are most likely to look away. And then there's vicarious trauma. Don't worry, guys, there is some positive stuff coming. So I think, broadly speaking, most people will know what vicarious trauma is, but I do have a clearer definition. It's the emotional and psychological impact of being repeatedly exposed to other people's traumatic experiences, often altering one's sense of safety, trust, and worldview. And so the University of California, off the back of the Boston bombings, did some research into the psychological impact of those who were there at the event and those who just consumed hours and hours of content in news. And that they actually found that those who'd consumed the news had some more adverse mental health outcomes than those who had witnessed it. Because those who had witnessed it, presumably it had happened, it is a terrible thing to be a part of, but those who just watched and watched and watched were more adversely impacted. And this research was done around the time of September 11, because I remember, for those who remember, how many times did that plane going back in just replay and replay and replay? We don't have the data or the research that'll give us an idea of the impact that the ongoing atrocities inflicted in Gaza will have on us. Because we've never had a live-streamed atrocities. I've worked in legacy media for a long time, and anytime there's violence, even if there's like a local brawl or something, there tends to be, you kind of cull the imagery that gets through the screens. And so we won't really know the impact that this is having. I know that I have consumed way too much horror on my phone. And that trauma not only will have longer term impacts, but it will also lead to that whole doom and gloom. This is too terrible, I need to look away. And so there's often this tension that I find people will say, well, we need to bear witness, we can't look away. And I'm like, I get it. But bearing witness is not doing irreparable damage to your psyche. Bearing witness and caring is not hours and hours of scrolling and crying. Even though I have done that, I've scrolled and I've cried, be it this issue or something else. And so there is some good news. There's a difference between news avoidance and news fatigue. So news fatigue is like when you rightly feel this is exhausting. Trump got re-elected. There's so many things that it's just hard to consume it and feel positive about the world. And when you have that fatigue, it's your body telling you that you need a reset. It's your body telling you that you need a break. And listening to that, I have found, and responding to that, and then returning to the arena is the really important part. That you can take a break. You can self-care. You can connect with other people. You can go and find, I love to watch, there's nothing more that I love than watching reels of dogs chewing vegetables. Like if any of my family members did it, I'd want to punch them in the throat. But as soon as a dog does it, I'm like, oh, this is so cute. So I just watch dogs eating broccoli. And that brings me a lot of joy. So find the things that bring you joy and then I think the key is to return. You don't care less. You're no longer less informed. You don't need to see, another image of coral bleaching to know that coral bleaching exists and that coral bleaching is bad. You can still be informed. It's when that tips over into news avoidance, when you avoid it altogether, that there are real concerns for social cohesion, political participation. It's when sort of conspiracy theories and things online and misinformation are more likely to land in the minds and hearts of those who avoid. So that's the good news. The good news is don't feel guilty about needing to take a break. Don't feel guilty about needing to feel human. Don't feel guilty about feeling sad. These are all, it's your body telling you that you need to do something to look after yourself. Okay, so this is another, what in the Game of Thrones is that? But this was another picture that got painted of, I did not hold a sword. When she asked me to paint me, she took a picture and she gave me a broom. And I was like, am I a witch? But then she replaced it with the sword. And so this was after the victory against the ABC. And then later I said to her, why did you give me a sword? I'm a very non-violent person. I think I've made my views clear on conflict and harm. And then she said, because I think you have a secret weapon. And then she said, I asked her what that secret weapon is. And then she said that's her view was that I had my beliefs and my unwavering beliefs. And that my secret weapon, and that not many people necessarily know what their beliefs are, let alone continue to stand by them and fight for them. So I was like, oh, that's nice. So then it made me think, what are my secret weapons and what are yours? And often we don't take time to sit there and I guess give ourselves a bit of a pat on the back about the things that mean something to us, the things that define us, the things that perhaps separate ourselves from others. And if I was to share with you what my secret weapon is, other than the courage of my conviction and my values, I would say it's my connections to my family, which are really strong, and it's finding joy and humour, even in the darkest times. And after that conversation I had with her and identifying that, I was like, okay, well, I'm going to lean into those things. I know that they're part of me. I want to enjoy them more. And so, I guess I challenge you guys to think, what are your secret weapons? What is your strength? And I know often as women, we're self-deprecating, perhaps we deflect, we don't like to sit there and overtly give ourselves a pat on the back because we're just not socialised to stand there and own it. But I do implore you, if there's one thing you take away today, is to think about what your secret weapon or weapons is and how that can be nurtured to help your emotional well-being. Okay, sorry, let me get these all up. Whoop. Sorry. All right. You can trust me, I'm a journalist. I've got some final tips to share. I would suggest that, yes, we bear witness, the weight of knowing and staying informed, but still caring about yourself. Bear witness, but not to the point of destruction. Nobody benefits if you are burnt out, if you are numb, if you don't look after yourself. Don't allow fatigue to become avoidance. Just remember, fatigue's not a bad thing. It's your body telling you, I need a break, this is too much, something has to change. Don't turn away from friends and family. In those times when I talk about my superpower, it was my connections that have gotten me through the hardest 2 years of my life. One of the things I also find myself doing is minimizing how hard it is. Because I'll be like, well, I mean, but like, at least I've got a roof over my head, and at least I'm not being bombed in my sleep, and at least I'm not this, and at least I haven't been, and I started making these strange grand statements or first world problems, and I know I have a lot of privilege, and I just spent a lot of time qualifying what it was that I was feeling. You can be privileged. You can have a lovely roof over your head. You can have all of these things, and you can still be struggling. Also, don't tell yourself that you're not resilient, strong enough. The amount of people who said to me, I couldn't do what you did. I'm just not strong enough. I was like, I still don't believe I could do what I did. It's that resilience is a muscle, and it's something that can be trained. Some things: do scream into a pillow, release anger. I've been doing a lot of therapy. I hope it shows. And one of the things that my therapist is she's actually asking me to do things that physically show how angry I am. Like, I get a blanket and I twist it, like release what it is that you're feeling. Just not in the way Bob Catter wants to. Get a mental health plan. I know, and this next one, exercise, I know it sounds so like exercise, eat well, doctor, apple a day keeps a doctor away. Like, it sounds so cliche, but it really works. Allow yourself to feel everything that you feel and fail. I have put so many measures in place. I'm like, I've got a gratitude journal, I'm going to this, I'm going to do that. And then before I know it, I'm crying and screaming at my kids. And I'm like, oh, that lasted 4.5 minutes. And then I try again. You can take a break. There are times where I went completely offline. I just had to cut off from the world, said no to everything that came my way, and I just took a break. Seek tools to stay critical and engaged. As we say, we don't want that news fatigue to turn into news avoidance, and that's why media literacy and media engagement is so important, because it's important for our political participation. It's important for how we navigate Australian life. And finally, resilience is like a muscle. I think that's all I have to share. Again, I mean, take of it what you will. I think it's a real privilege to stand here and share my experience. I don't see myself as a wellbeing expert. But I'm definitely somebody who's had to show strength and navigate turmoil in the public eye, and it's something I don't wish upon anybody else. But as I said, because I think one of my superpowers is my conviction, I would do it all again.